All right, let's get started on our stomachs, please. So we'll come to face down, forehead can rest in hands. Just take a few breaths, settle in. Letting the body come to rest, taking a few deep breaths. Feeling as much of the body as you can. And just noticing how your body is arriving today. We're going to work through a little bit of everything this morning. So as you're ready to coordinating with your breath, you're going to, on the inhale, just allow your belly to tighten a little bit so you can direct that inhale into the low back, into the hips. You can imagine it almost like you're trying to push those hips away with the breath. And trying to expand through that lower body. Starting to wake it up. As you're ready to, you could also begin, as you tighten that belly a little bit, you could also think of engaging those butt muscles a little bit to push those hips into the ground as you inhale into that engagement. Releasing all of it with the exhale. A few more breaths like this. And then on inhale, you can bring yourself up to the forearms. Take a few breaths here. Continue with that sequence of engaging into the inhale, so creating space through the low back, through the hips, with that engagement through the pelvis, and then releasing. And you might notice that you start taking on a bit of that arching and rounding, letting the breath guide you between that lift and that drop. Take your time here, feeling each part of the movement. You'll find that on the inhale, your mid-body, your chest is lifting away from the ground, and on the exhale, everything's settling back down. Couple more times. Eventually, you can bring yourself all the way up through all fours and move through your cat stretch, your arching and rounding here a few times. Exhaling to arch and press up, and then inhaling down. 4 or 5 more times through this at your own pace, working through that arching and rounding of the whole spine, adding any side to sides that would feel good for you. Eventually you can take the knees just a touch wider, push the hips back through your child's pose, spend a few breaths here. And then you'll begin kind of a forwards, backwards rock. So on your inhale, bringing yourself forwards, dropping the hips, looking up, a little bit of a back bend, and then coming up and back and all the way back towards that child's pose. Just move between this a few times, make it as fluid as feels good. Pushing those hips back, and then bringing everything in kind of like a wave-like motion forwards to drop the hips. In and out, 3 or 4 more times. Finding a pace that kind of suits your own internal rhythm today. Next time you come through, you can end in your child's pose. 1 or 2 breaths there. And then come forwards through all fours. And we're going to do hip circles here. So we're going to find a nice stable core so we don't wobble all over the place. And then I'm going to start with my right knee. You're going to bring it back behind you to kick the heel up towards the ceiling, and then up and around. So hips stay fairly still here. You have a little bit of wiggle room. We're going to do big circles with that right knee. 5 or 6 one direction. And then switch the direction. Knee stays bent. And not too much, so I don't want to see you fall way over to the side, but a little bit of side motion will happen on the opposite hip. We're just kind of warming up through the hips. So 5 or 6 circles each direction, and then do the same thing on the opposite side. Knee up and around, 5 or 6 times one way. Shouldn't be too much movement through the rest of the body. See if you can do this mostly through the leg. Switching sides when you get to 5 or 6. And then coming back through all fours, walk the hands forwards and just work to keeping the hips high, drop the chest down. Forehead might come to the ground, chest might come to the ground. Few breaths down here. When you're ready, you can walk the hands back, come back through all fours, tuck the toes behind you, and you're going to lift the hips up towards a down dog. So keep the knees bent at first so you can get the hips nice and high, pushing through the hands. And then start working to straighten the knees. Lowering one heel, then the other, a little bit of a hamstring stretch, calf stretch. First time around this morning. A few breaths up high here. We're going to move through that same kind of wave-like sequence we just did through that child's pose to your cobra, but now from your down dog. So if you want to watch me for one round, starting from your down dog, you're going to pull yourself forwards to your high plank. the knees the first few times here. And you're gonna lower yourself all the way to the ground. Elbows stay close to the sides. Pushing yourself up through that back bend, as high or as low as you'd like. Coming all the way down, and then lifting yourself back up through your half plank, full plank, and back to down dog. So if you want a progress version of this, you would roll forwards, stay up high in that high plank, lower yourself slowly, all as one down to the ground, pressing up through your cobra, coming down, and then lifting back up through your plank to your down dog. So take a few breaths in between each sequence in your down dog. You're gonna go through that 4 or 5 times. Coming forwards to your plank, dropping to half plank if you so choose. Elbows stay into sides, lowering yourself down. Pressing up, coming down, lifting up through plank, and back to down dog. 3 or 4 breaths in between each one in your down dog. Repeat that 4 or 5 times at your own pace. So plank, lowering down, pressing up, coming down, lifting up, and back to down dog. Couple more times at least. Working to coordinate your breath as best you can. Inhaling and exhaling through each movement. And when you finish the last one 4 or 5 times, coming back to your down dog, taking a few breaths. If you'd like, you can come all the way down through child's pose or another resting position. Give the hands a break. Let's hold on 1 second. Back through all 4s. And let's go through some rotations. So straight arm, you can reach up. I'm starting on the left as high as you can, and then reach under and through 5 or 6 times on one side and on the opposite side. We've started warming everything up. It's moving through what you have access to. Switching sides as you're ready. Inhaling to reach up, exhaling to reach through. Finish each side. Then you're going to come back through a down dog, lifting hips high. Let's take your right leg up into the air. Still push equally through both hands so that the hips stay fairly even. No falling over to one side. Lifting that leg as high as it can come. Few breaths. And then you can step it forwards towards a lunge position. You can drop that back knee down. Address yourself here. Take a few breaths. And then eventually, we're going to stack yourself on top of this torso here. Hands are going to come behind the head. For a few rounds, you're just going to rotate as far as you can to one side and then to the other side. Trying to keep the hips still as you rotate on top. A few rounds. A couple more to each side. Eventually find the middle. And you're gonna straighten that back leg. So you come up to a high lunge, staying low into this front knee. This time arms are gonna come out wide. You're gonna do the same rotation. Opening all the way. If your right leg's forwards, you're opening to the right first, and then slowly coming open to the left. As you come left, don't let this knee collapse in. It stays out, and then go back and forth. Three to four times to each side. After your third round, you can drop left hand to right foot or opposite hand to front foot and reach up through a rotation here. A few breaths. And then take the other hand back down to the ground, front leg back to your plank. Holding here a couple breaths. And then coming up through your down dog. 3 or 4 breaths up in your down dog. We'll do the same sequence on the opposite side. So when you're ready, lifting left foot into the air. A few breaths. And then coming forwards, bringing that foot towards your lunge. Dropping back knee. Couple breaths to find your lunge here. When you're ready, lifting up to stack on top. Hands behind head and doing a rotation. Controlled rotation each direction. Keeping a good rooting through that front foot. Twice more each way. And then as you're ready to, find your center, find that core, straighten back leg. Find your nice rooted position here. Arms straight out, rotating towards left thigh first. And then opening, keeping that knee solid, not letting it collapse in. We'll do 4 to each side. Challenge for balance and control. Staying as low as you can into that front foot, knee. When you reach 4 to each side, dropping right hand to left foot and rotating up for a few breaths. 3 or 4 breaths. Bringing opposite hand down, leg comes back to your plank. Couple breaths here. And then up to your down dog. A few breaths. You could also take your child's pose or another resting position. Grabbing a sip of water if you need. As you're ready to, you're going to find your down dog. Walk the hands back. Couple breaths in your forward fold. Knees can bend as much as needed to support that upper body and hanging down. And then eventually roll yourself up to standing. Find some space to stand at the top of your mat. If that makes sense. You're going to take your left foot behind, bending into that front knee. We're gonna do another kind of endurance stability thing for this front foot. So hands can be at your hips or kind of just in front of you here. You're gonna step this back leg forwards to come towards elbow and then step back. So we're gonna do 8 on each side here. We're working on keeping that knee nice and stable. Knee comes hugging into chest every time. When you finish 8 on one side, shake it out for a breath and then do the same on the opposite side. Bending into that front knee and then stepping forwards and back with that back knee. So you're staying low into that front knee pretty much throughout. You're not fully straightening. It's just that back leg that's doing the moving. When you finish 8, let the legs relax. You're going to drop the hands down to the ground. Bend the knees and either step or jump back into your plank. High plank. Drop the knees down and we'll do 8 push-ups. So however makes sense for you, just make sure you screw the hands in. Elbows stay around 45 degrees and moving the whole body up and down. So squeeze those hips and keep the shoulders active. 8 push-ups. When you finish 8 push-ups, have a break, child's pose or something else. Deep breaths wherever you are. As you feel ready to, we're going to repeat that whole sequence. So find your way through all 4s. And then feet come to your plank. Lifting up through your down dog. Walking hands back. Moment in your fold. Rolling your way up to standing. And then starting with your right foot, you're going to do that lunge step. So staying in your lunge on that front knee, hugging that back knee in, and then stepping back. So always a bend in that front knee. 8 or so times. Hugging that knee in as tight as you can as it comes up. When you finish 8, give the legs a moment. Repeating that on the opposite side. Bending into the front leg. Stepping, back leg, hugging knee in, tight. Eight times. When you finish 8, legs can have a quick break. Folding down with the hands. Stepping back into your plank, high plank, dropping knees, and 8 push-ups. Hips stay low, finish 8 push-ups. Have a break, however suits you. Resting position, grab a sip of water. Taking deep breaths wherever you are. A few more things to do. We're going to work through a dynamic squat, which is going to mean a little bit of jumping around. So you can find your way up to standing. We're going to do starting with the feet narrow, you're going to be jumping the feet out and into a squat. So if you want to watch me for a second, starting here, find a nice active core, jumping the feet out wide, right into your squat, and then jumping back to narrow. So you want to land into that squat and then jump back in. Absorbing through the squat to jump back in. We're going to go for 10 of those. So start at your own pace. Should be a fairly light landing. Make as little noise as possible. As you land into that squat, make sure the knees stay square. They're not collapsing in or out, and you're landing with feet straight ahead. A few more. When you finish around 8, have a break. You might, as you're resting, practice standing on one leg, 10 breaths on each side. It's practicing that balance. Taking 10 nice big deep breaths on one foot and then the other. Moving that non-balancing leg around, giving some challenge to that standing leg. Just practicing functional rest. When you've taken 10 breaths on each foot, we're going to do those jump out squats again. Your own pace, 8 to 10. Landing as light as you can. Not letting that torso collapse on the way down. Nine and 10. Same rest, balancing on one leg for 10 breaths. When you get to 10, switch to the other leg. Gradually slowing that breath down. Really pay attention through these squats as to how you're absorbing force through the lower body. A lot of us have a tendency to not absorb force very well through our ankles, knees, and hips. Few common compensations would be as you land, this happening, or feeling like you're stuck in the ankle and like kind of falling forwards, or torso falling forwards. to absorb force instead of the lower body. And for you riders, translating that to your riding then seems pretty obvious. Things like posting trot, landing off fences, 2-point, all those things require us to absorb force really well through the lower body. Otherwise, our feet might start rotating out in the stirrups. We'll be stuck in that pitched forward seat, not able to open the hips. Our horse will be stuck on the forehand. All those not nice things. So we're going to do one more round of these jumbo squats to your balancing rest. So 8 to 10 when you're ready. Jumping out and coming in. Notice how your feet position, how your knees position. Can you keep the core engaged? 7, 8, 9, and 10. Resting and you're balancing, 10 breaths on each side. Moving or not moving. Slowing that breath down over the 10 breaths. Pushing the sides once you reach 10. Grabbing a sip of water if you need. You're gonna come all the way back down to the mat. You can start seated. Starting seated, you're going to lower all the way down to lying on your back. We're going to work through 2 things here. First one we started last week. So knees coming to hover, pressing low back into the ground. Nice 90-degree angle. And then slowly straightening one leg and then the other. Opposite leg stays still. We're going to go through 8 on each side, so 16 in total. Low back stays pressing down, 90-degree angle at the hips. You should feel that core work a little bit. If you're not feeling the core, make sure the legs aren't hugging in nice and tight. They're at that true 90. And you finish 16 in total. Let the legs rest for a minute. Second round is going to be our, I don't even know what to call this one, controlled abduction. So legs are going to come straight up this time, still pressing that low back into the ground, flexing both ankles, slowly lowering one leg as far out to the side as you can control, bringing it back in, and then lowering it straight away from you, and back up. Alternating sides. Let's do 8 on each side of these as well. Controlled range of motion. Low back, pressing into the ground. Legs stay straight as you can keep them. No rushing. Eight to each side. Breathing. When you finish 8, for 16 in total. You can lower the legs, have a rest. We're going to go through those two one more time. As you're ready to, knees and hips come to 90, pressing low back into ground, straightening one and then the other. Eight to each side. Eight. Quick rest in between. And then when you're ready, straightening legs up high, lowering to the outside, lowering away on each side, 8 times. Controlled range of motion. Keeping those legs straight as possible. And low back pressing towards the ground the whole time. Breathing. If you aren't feeling your core by now, you officially have abs of steel. When you finish, 8 on each side, have a break. Grab a sip of water if you need. Flip onto one side. Knees are going to hug up towards your chest, making sure those hips are in line and the knees are in line here. We're going to do a clamshell to a kick. So what that's going to look like is top knee opening only as far as you can without the hip shifting, then lowering and then straightening that leg to kick it up to the side, and then coming back to that clamshell. So clamshell to kick. We'll do this 10 times on one side. Have a sense of control through that kick, so you're not just wildly flinging that leg around. Hips doing the work here. You'll feel the side of the leg. When you finish 10, roll over and we'll find the opposite side. Same thing. So clamshell, straighten to kick. Hips stay stacked through both movements. Controlling each segment. Times. When you finish 10 on the second side, come up through a kneeling seated position. And from here, find that prayer position with the forearms pressing up as far as you can without the forearms splitting apart for 10. When you get to 10, keep those forearms with those elbows at about 90 degrees, and you're going to open the arms wide and come back in. 10 times here, not letting that back arch. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Right back into those prayer pulses here for 10. And then right back into those openings and closings for 10. When you finish 10 of each motion twice, let those arms shake out. Come forwards through all fours. You can settle into a child's pose or another resting position of your choice. Knees come wide. And then sitting the hips back, letting the forehead and chest come towards the ground. Take about 10 big deep breaths here. If you'd like to, you can walk hands over to one side. Find that side body stretch. Another 5 breaths on each side. Walking the hands to the opposite side if you haven't already. Five breaths on that second side. And then stay in kind of this child's pose type position. Child's pose doesn't work for you, you can come through all fours. Knees are still going to be a bit wider. Lower onto those forearms. We're going to do a tactical frog move here. So you're going to push the hips back as far as they're able to through these wide knees. As you come forwards, you're going to rotate one hip with you. So knee becomes your pivot point. And pushing forwards and backwards. Rotating one hip every time you come forwards. Let's do about 6 on each side, so 12 in total. Big or small rotation, doesn't matter. Work with what you have access to. you finish 6 on each side, you can make your way onto your back. And we'll cross one ankle over opposite thigh, pulling the knee in, taking about 10 breaths into this hip stretch. Rocking side to side if you'd like, if that feels good. Or simply breathing. Letting things slow down. When you're ready to, you can switch sides. Crossing opposite ankle over thigh and then hugging the thigh in, grabbing behind to hold. Another 10 or so breaths on this side. When you're ready to let the second side release, you can bring the feet close in together, let the knees fall open wide. A few breaths here, arms can stay at your sides or come up overhead. Feeling as much of the body as you can with that inhale and exhale. Or so breaths here. And then you can begin to close the knees, but I want you to do this in slow motion. So you're going to slowly start lifting the knees. And on the way up, if you find any spots where there's some shaking present in the legs, I want you to stay there for a few breaths, allowing that shaking to grow and take over as much of the legs as it wants to as you make your way back up to the top. Might be subtle, might be obvious. Let's work with what's there. Taking as long as you want to bring those knees up to the top. And when they do eventually reach the top, let the knees fall side to side for a few breaths. Eventually you can settle into stillness, however suits you best. Knees can stay bent or legs can come long. Just become aware or mindful of your breath. Following its rhythm as it goes through the body. You might take this opportunity to call to mind a few things that you're grateful for today. Noticing how that sensation of gratitude transfers from your mind to your body. Spending a few breaths just noticing how that sensation travels through the body, how the body settles. Taking, over time, a few deeper inhale, as deep as you can. Hold for a moment at the top of that inhale. And then release the full exhale. Do that a couple times. Nice full inhale. Pausing at the top. And then relaxing through an exhale. Once or twice more. Noticing if you can bring a sense of heaviness through your body with the exhale. Allowing as much of the body as you can to release onto the mat. Letting your breath settle into its normal rhythm. Noticing the sensation of the mat underneath you. As you feel ready to, you can start adding small movements back to the body. Maybe taking arms overhead for a nice full body stretch, making the body as long as possible. Releasing again on those exhales. As you're ready to, eventually rolling onto one side, making your way back up to seated. Thank you very much for joining me today, and we will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day.